Jeon, at 9 years old, had one dream: to watch every movie ever made. This was easy because he lived in a video rental store owned by Park Sang-sik. He spent every day watching movies and was sometimes visited by his older brother, Jun, before work. As Jeon grew older, he watched every video in the store. One night, while watching a movie with his best friends, Jeon and Jun, he had a realization: since he loved movies so much, he should become an actor. Jeon decides to chase his dream and auditions for the movie, Wealth and Prosperity, directed by Ma Seong-woo. He's excited but a little awed. Director Ma isn't impressed and even tears up Jeon's profile after the audition. As Jeon leaves, a woman enters the building. He notices her name, Moo-bai, and, as a movie lover, he's stunned that someone could have that name. It's love at first sight. After passing him, Moo-bai turns back, and their eyes meet for a few seconds. When Jeon was 9, watching movies every day, Moo-bai was getting into trouble. After a fight with a kid at the playground, her dad picked her up, apologizing for her behavior. But Moo-bai always felt she had to compete for his love. He loved movies so much he named her after them, and seemed to love them more than her. Since her dad was always working, Moo-bai spent her childhood with her friend Woo-jung-hoo. To her, her dad was as good as dead. But when he actually passed away, she didn't know how to feel. After his funeral, she watched 4-Leaf Clover, the movie he dedicated his life to. She was shocked by how boring and plain it was. This was what she'd been competing against. Now, at 26, Jeon dreams of becoming an actor, while Moo-bai works as an assistant director. She wants to prove how foolish her dad was for dedicating his life to such a dull movie. Though Jeon and Moo-bai are opposites, their shared connection to movies brings them together. Sang-sik now owns a pub called Vide Bar, where Jun works part-time while producing music. Jeon joins them with food, and the three catch up. Sang-sik isn't thrilled about Jun dropping out of college for music, but Jeon admires it. She also has a dream she wants to pursue. After some nagging, Sang-sik realizes someone's missing. Where's Jeon? Jeon is on set, playing an extra in a movie. It's not going well. He messes up scenes and gets yelled at by director Ma. But Jeon doesn't mind. Being on set means being near Moo-bai. He's smitten, watching her closely. One day, he sees her smoking alone during a break, and he wonders. While Jeon is enchanted, Moo-bai feels differently. She's annoyed by his presence. He's loud, popular, and stands out too much. When Jeon helps her carry a basket of props, she finally confronts him. She struggles to make friends. Not everyone is like Jeon, a cheerful whelp with golden retriever energy. That night, Jeon can't stop thinking about what Moo-bai meant by whelp. While hanging out at Jun's studio, he finds out it means a puppy that eats poop. Lol. But Jeon, being totally delulu, convinces himself that Moo-bai must like him. Later, Jeon joins them and shares her plan to enter a screenwriting contest. She dreams of becoming a scriptwriter. But Jeon is too distracted and announces he has a crush. Jun and Jeon, completely uninterested, only care about what kind of pizza to order for dinner. Another day of filming means another day of Jeon pestering Moo-bai. He trips her on set to get her attention, steals costumes to sit with her at lunch, and even follows her after work. Jeon enjoys being around her, but Moo-bai isn't interested. She makes it clear, if she ever needs his help, she'll ask. For now, she's fine on her own. But the interactions don't stop. When they coincidentally meet at a wedding for their part-time jobs, Jeon is the host, Moo-bai is the videographer. He's thrilled, thinking fate brought them together. He even suggests teaming up for wedding gigs, but as always, Moo-bai isn't interested. Still, she can only resist for so long. On a bus trip for filming, Moo-bai sits alone, and for a second, she thinks about moving her backpack so Jeon can sit next to her. But before she does, another staff member offers Jeon a seat elsewhere. She feels a small pang of disappointment. Later, she falls asleep on the bus and wakes up to the sound of photos being taken. Of course, it's Jeon, snapping pictures of her sleeping. After filming wraps up, Jeon buys some corn from a street vendor but loses track of time and misses his bus. Lucky for him, Moo-bai misses the same bus. Delighted, Gyom waits with her at the bus stop. They munch on their corn and chat. Mu-bai, a bit feisty, argues there's more to her than people think, just like there's more to life than movies. Gyom must not be cheerful all the time, right? Curious, Gyom asks about her directing dreams. With a straight face, Mu-bai says she wants to make an amazing Melo movie. Gyom, caught off guard, spits out his corn. When she asks if he'll continue acting, Gyom says he hopes to, but for him, movies are about films, not Mu-bai. She doesn't take it as flirting, though. Instead, his comment makes her pause. It reminded her of someone who once said the exact same thing. Gyom and Mu-bai ride the bus back to town together. Even though the bus is mostly empty, Gyom chooses the seat right next to her, because, of course, it's his favorite. Mu-bai closes her eyes to rest, and a memory surfaces, a phone call from her father when she was in high school. She wakes up suddenly, tears rolling down her cheeks, her hand tightly grasping Gyom's. Embarrassed, she brushes it off as a mistake, and the two sit in silence for the rest of the ride. But Gyom keeps stealing concerned glances her way. On the final day of filming, Mu-bai runs into a journalist who once knew her father. He assumes she's in the industry to fulfill her late father's dreams. Annoyed, Mu-bai firmly shuts him down, warning him to stop making assumptions. From a distance, Gyom watches the tense exchange, quietly observing more layers of Mu-bai unfold. Back at Vide Bar, Sang-sik lets Si-jun leave early to celebrate his 7-year anniversary with Ju-ah. While Si-jun heads off to meet Ju-ah, the production crew and actors celebrate the wrap of the filming for director Ma's movie. Director Ma, though emotional, is also full of doubt about his career. Gyom, on the other hand, can't shake his concern for Mu-bai. He follows her outside in the snow, where he finds her smoking alone, as usual. He approaches her, and just like before, they start talking. But this time, things are different. Mu-bai opens up. She admits that she finds it hard to connect with people, because she always feels like they'll leave her eventually, especially those who seem too bright or cheerful. Gyom, with his golden retriever energy, is exactly the type of person she's learned to be wary of. But when Gyom asks her if she would still accept him if he were to share his own secrets with her, Mu-bai has no answer. Instead, they just gaze at each other, lost in the moment. Finally, Mu-bai pulls Gyom in for a kiss. It's her answer to his question, a wordless admission of how she truly feels. When they pull away, Gyom wonders if this is another one of her mistakes. After all, she dismissed her earlier actions as mistakes, like when she accidentally grabbed his hand on the bus. But Mu-bai reassures him that it wasn't a mistake, and they kiss again, this time with certainty, confirming their feelings for one another. In that moment, Guillaume understands why he's been drawn to Mu-bai. Like him, she's just been trying to navigate through the darkness, and maybe, together, they can find their way through it. Meanwhile, Ju-ah and Si-jun's relationship comes to an unexpected end. What was meant to be a celebration of their 7-year anniversary turns into a painful moment when Ju-ah reveals that she wants to break up. Mu-bai's dad always said she was soft-hearted and easily attached to small, pitiful things, stray dogs, helpless worms, or standing up for Jung-hoo, who was bullied. Mu-bai was kind, but when she met Gyom, she felt drawn to him, even though he wasn't pitiful or small. She grew attached, curious about him and his relationship with his brother. When Gyom disappeared, Mu-bai felt worried, then angry. She knew she couldn't keep this up. After a talk with director Chu, Mu-bai decided to let go. She promised herself to work hard, make her own movie one day, and forget about Gyom. Gyom disappeared to care for Jun, who was in a car accident. He stayed by his brother's side in the hospital, supporting him every step of the way. When he took short breaks, it was only to get fresh clothes from Sang-sik. Though it was hard, Gyom didn't show it. While Jun rested, Gyom thought about restarting his movie review blog. A call from a magazine company made him consider writing reviews for money. After Jun was discharged, they returned home. His recovery was tough, but with Gyom's support, he made it through. They resumed their movie nights, and just like that, 5 years passed. Mu-bai achieved her dream of directing a movie. At a screening, she's shocked to see Gyom in the audience. 5 years had passed, but he was still curious about her work. After the movie, he asked if it was a romance, if it was about love. Just like years ago, when he asked why she ate alone, Mubai simply answered, yes, without explaining. The host moved on. After the event, Mubai found Jeon outside, staring at her movie poster. Disturbed by seeing him again, she asked her staff for a recording of the event. Meanwhile, Jeon regretted his actions, brooding over it at Sejun's studio. Sejun still works at Vide Bar with Sang-sik. He keeps saying he'll quit, but never does. The bar is now a hit, thanks to Jua's retro upgrade idea 5 years ago. Hearing her name upsets Sejun. He's still hurt from their breakup. When he finds a magazine Jeon left at his studio, featuring Jua as a scriptwriter, it stings. Sejun confronts Jeon, frustrated that he supports her despite her absence during Jun's hospitalization. But Jeon just loves movies too much, so much that he even watched Mubai's film and told Sejun about it. Meanwhile, Mubai watches the recording of her screening, fixating on Jeon's question. Disturbed, she drinks with her colleague PD Ha Yun-sil. Her movie is doing well, but she only cares about how Jeon got into the screening. She asks PD Ha for a favor but can't recall what, thanks to a nasty hangover. Director Ma's latest movie is struggling, and he's worried about his career. But Jeon shows up after 5 years, and their reunion feels like old times. Meanwhile, Mubai meets with director Chu, the one who once encouraged her to create her own movie. They talk about Chu's upcoming retrospective and Mubai's feelings about her success. But when asked if she feels at peace, Mubai isn't so sure. Jeon reunites with director Ma's staff, who are thrilled to see him after years. He learns about director Chu's retrospective and that Mubai is now on Chu's team. Director Ma recalls how close Jeon and Mubai once were. Jeon skips dinner with them to keep his movie night tradition with Jun, but things feel different. Jeon isn't as chatty or excited. Sensing this, Jun checks in, asking how Jeon's really doing. Jeon insists he's fine. He hasn't changed, just grown into a more mature man. Mubai can't stop thinking about Jeon and wonders again why he disappeared. To make sense of her feelings, she asks her mom a strange question: what if dad wasn't dead but just went away and came back? Her mom, confused, says she'd like that but quickly changes the subject, mentioning that the house across the street finally sold after years. Jeon and director Ma drive to director Chu's retrospective in Jeon's sleek red car. Mubai is already there, watching her mentor speak to the press. When she glances toward the entrance, she sees Jeon. Instead of feeling angry or frustrated, she feels relieved. She can't look away as he slowly approaches her. Mubai thinks, I know it sounds crazy, but that day, Jeon looked like someone returning home after a long trip. I thought I saw relief and an unexplainable exhaustion in him. In a room full of strangers and colleagues, Jeon and Mubai only see each other. It feels like they are the only two people there, until PD Ha interrupts. She has found out who the fraud was at Mubai's movie screening. Mubai tries to stop her from speaking, but it's too late. PD Ha points directly at Jeon, who has been listening the whole time. Mubai quickly pulls PD Ha away, and PD Ha assumes that Jeon, now a movie critic, must have trashed Mubai's film. After all, critics and directors rarely get along. Eventually, they all move into the theater to watch one of director Chu's films. Mubai and PD Ha sit right in front of Jeon and director Ma. Director Ma congratulates Mubai on her debut, but Jeon stays silent. Mubai also has nothing to say to him. Mubai leaves the event early and heads to her car, only to realize she doesn't have her keys. Luckily, Jeon catches up to her, holding the keys she dropped. As he hands them over, Mubai is hit with a memory from 5 years ago, when he gave her the keys to his bike. She hasn't forgotten. She wants to escape, but her questions burn inside her. Is he a movie critic? Has he reviewed her film? And most of all, why did he disappear? Was he sick? Did someone die? Was he in trouble? Jeon stays silent, and Mubai, frustrated and hurt, assumes she must have been nothing to him. She tells him to never appear in front of her again. Mubai's wish for Jeon to stay away doesn't last long, because he and Jun have just moved into the house across the street. Shocked, Mubai can't believe her new reality. Jeon is just as surprised when he spots her in his front yard. This wasn't planned. Jun picked the house. But Jeon adjusts faster than Mubai. With a small smile, he offers a handshake, reminding her of what she said the night before, that movie critics and directors are supposed to be enemies. 3 years ago, Jeon was fully devoted to caring for Jun, putting his brother's well-being above everything else. Meanwhile, Mubai couldn't escape thoughts of Jeon. Even something as simple as seeing corn, her favorite food, reminded her of him, so she refused to eat it. One day, Jeon spotted Mubai while riding the bus. In a fleeting moment of longing, he got off, hoping to approach her. But reality crashed back. His phone rang with a call from the hospital, pulling him back into his responsibilities. That chance to reconnect slipped away, like so many others. For Mubai, cutting the thread that connected them wasn't easy, but she made the decision to block Jeon's number. When Jeon finally gathered the courage to call her, all he heard was the hollow sound of a disconnected line. Mubai feels like she's living in an Alfred Hitchcock movie, always waiting for something to go wrong. Being Jeon's neighbor feels like sitting next to a ticking bomb. She doesn't know when it will go off. But what bothers her even more is how hard he tries to avoid her. He skips her house during introductions, gets off the bus when she's on it, avoids her at the field, pretends not to see her at her mother's meat market, and quickly pulls Jun inside when they pass each other. Jeon takes her words about staying away too seriously, and it frustrates her. Jeon soon learns there's more to Mubai than he thought. She plays with the neighborhood kids and helps the elderly carry their things. Lately, she has picked up a new habit, peeking through her curtains to watch Jeon across the street. One day, she sees him walking toward her house and assumes he wants to see her. Excited, she opens the door, only to find someone else, her childhood friend, Jung-hoo. He has returned from the US after surgery, looking much healthier. The two happily reunite. As for Jeon, he had actually seen Jung-hoo enter Mubai's house and moved closer to investigate. Seeing Mubai hug Jung-hoo makes him jealous, and he even considers moving out. But Jun reminds him of their housewarming party that night and tells him to invite Si-jun. Si-jun stands outside the movie theater, debating whether to watch Jua's new film. Just as he decides against it, he gets a surprise, a personal invitation from Jua herself. After 5 years, they finally meet again. Meanwhile, at Jeon's house, he comes face to face with Jung-hoo. As the former resident, Jung-hoo knows the house well and shares some tips. He stopped by after visiting Mubai and is curious if his old steel box is still hidden somewhere. Jeon playfully misleads him around the front yard, but the box isn't actually there. Frustrated, Jung-hoo storms back to Mubai's house, convinced the new neighbor is a total weirdo. But then it hits him. He's already met Jeon. And something feels off. Mubai and Jeon seem oddly interested in each other. Si-jun meets Jua but is still bitter about their breakup. He resents her success and hates that she never used their relationship as inspiration, while he did for his music. He tells her to stay out of his and Jeon's lives. At the housewarming party, Jeon won't stop venting to Si-jun about Mubai and Jung-hoo. Si-jun finally tells him to either fix things or move on. He also reminds Jeon that Jun's accident wasn't his fault. Jeon insists he has no secrets. Later, Mubai checks Jeon's blog, disappointed he hasn't reviewed her movie. Meanwhile, Jun reveals he chose the house for its big white wall, perfect for projecting movies, a childhood dream of Jeon's. But Jeon feels guilty, wishing Jun would think about himself for once. To make up, the brothers watch a movie together, just like they did as kids. Si-jun makes progress on his new song. Meanwhile, director Ma anxiously awaits a movie critic for an interview. When Jeon arrives, the director is surprised but relieved. He's a fan of Jeon's reviews and trusts him to write a good one. Mubai keeps checking Jeon's blog for a review of her movie but finds nothing. She assumes he only writes about films by people he likes, especially since he's reviewed all of director Ma's work. Moving on, she sets up a meeting with the scriptwriter for her next project, Melody. Jua drinks alone at a bar, feeling like she has no one to talk to, until she notices Mubai sitting nearby, also alone. They bond over drinks, vent about their relationship troubles, and share their new occupations. Mubai is a civil servant, Jua is a Pilates instructor. Before parting, they exchange numbers but delete them immediately after. Later, Jeon spots a drunk Mubai stumbling home. Wanting to ensure she's safe, he follows her quietly, only to be stopped by police, who mistake him for a stalker. To avoid Mubai noticing him, he willingly goes with them to the station. He tries to explain, but they don't believe him. Just when things seem hopeless, Mubai unexpectedly appears to get a drink of water, and ends up bailing him out. As they walk home, Mubai confronts Jeon about his sudden disappearance. Shouldn't he have apologized? Jeon, looking guilty, sincerely says sorry. Though Mubai is touched, she still feels frustrated. She then asks if he still reviews every movie he watches, subtly craving his attention. Before parting, she mentions her upcoming film, hinting that they won't be seeing much of each other. Mubai and Jua meet again, this time for work. Jua turns out to be the scriptwriter of Melody, the film Mubai wants to work on. Though Mubai is eager, Jua hesitates, as the script was inspired by her past with Jun. Meanwhile, Jeon investigates Jung-hoo's connection to Mubai. Why does he call her his girl? To get closer, Jeon returns Jung-hoo's lost steel box and even invites him inside to see his toy collection. Mubai and Jeon coincidentally take the same bus but part ways, only to reunite at her office, where Jeon is set to interview her. During the interview, Mubai reveals she dislikes movies because her father prioritized them over her. Despite this, she's determined to prove that films don't have to consume one's life. Jeon offers to watch a movie with her as an apology for the past, but she declines. Jua takes a break from work and finds comfort in one of Jun's songs on SoundCloud, while Jun catches up on sleep at his studio. Meanwhile, Mubai changes her mind about Jeon's movie invitation. When she sees him setting up an outdoor screening in his front yard, she pulls up a chair on her balcony and joins in, silently accepting his apology. Jeon visits his parents' memorial alone on the anniversary of their passing since Jun has a therapy session. His car breaks down on the way, but a kind street vendor helps him fix it. Later, he has to walk when the main road is closed, but he eventually reaches the site and reassures his parents that he and Jun are doing fine. Though he doesn't remember much about them, he's unsure if he'll continue visiting. Jeon has always believed that after enough hardship, good things will follow. On his way back, rain forces him to pull over due to broken windshield wipers. After the rough day he's had, he hopes something good is finally coming his way. Mubai notices a particular part of Jeon's article that stands out, perhaps something personal or unexpected that makes her pause. While she processes his words, Jeon is busy celebrating his success. The magazine company loves his work and wants to expand his presence to video, TV, and radio, offering him a huge pay raise. His career is about to take off, and his next project is a review of director Jun-young's latest film. Meanwhile, Mubai had been his unexpected good luck charm earlier in the day. When Jeon's car broke down in the rain, she appeared with an umbrella, shielding him from the downpour. She even managed to fix his windshield wipers with her playful tinkering. It was a small moment, but one that seemed to turn his luck around. It looks like everyone is making moves, some forward, some uncertain. Jun returns to his studio after watching Jua's movie, but just as Jua builds up the courage to enter, she's caught off guard when another woman answers the door. Startled, she makes a quick exit before realizing that the woman is just a singer helping Jun with his music. Even the singer notices how much Jun has changed. He's lost his old confidence, almost as if he's carrying a weight that he hasn't let go of yet. Meanwhile, Jeon finds himself in Director Ma's office, flipping through manga and noticing framed pictures of the director with his daughter. It's a surprising discovery, considering Director Ma never talks about his personal life. But his reasoning, no one would want to live with someone so obsessed with movies. Sound familiar? It's an eerie parallel to Mubai's father, though Jeon doesn't say it out loud. Speaking of work, Director Ma warns Jeon that his movie reviews have been a little too harsh lately. But Jeon shrugs it off. Work is work, and he's just doing his job. As for Mubai, she's invited to a preview of Director Ku's movie, but she also has another important meeting, Joo drops by to discuss Melody asterisk. After some back and forth, Joo agrees to collaborate, trusting Mubai to bring her story to life. Joo also wants to contribute to the music selection, but Mubai quickly asserts her creative control. In the end, the two shake hands, sealing their partnership. Jun joins his family for dinner but feels like the odd one out. His doctor brother gives him an ultimatum: quit music and come home. Jun fights back, arguing that no one ever believed in him. Meanwhile, Mubai attends director Koo's movie preview and runs into Jeon. He teases that it's their second movie together. After the screening, he suggests dinner, but before Mubai can respond, he takes off after a phone call, leaving her standing there. Feeling dejected after his brother's harsh words, Jun questions his life choices while working at Sang-sik's pub. Sang-sik suggests they drink their worries away, but Jun declines when Joo unexpectedly shows up. Assuming she wants to talk about their past, Jun shuts her down. He doesn't want friendship or reconciliation. But Joo has a different reason for coming. She wants his music for her new movie, which was inspired by their relationship. After supporting him for 7 years, she asks him to return the favor and support her dreams. Jeon scolds Jun for skipping his physical therapy, refusing to accept excuses. He insists Jun must continue, offering to cover the medical bills with his new earnings. Meanwhile, Mubai is shocked to see Jeon on TV and trending online, yet he still hasn't reviewed her movie. Jun confides in Sang-sik about Joo's request to collaborate. He worries she's taking advantage of him, but Sang-sik urges him to consider that she may have thought carefully before reaching out. Joo continues to reflect on her request to see Jun and updates Mubai. Though he hasn't agreed yet, she's confident he's the right choice for their movie's music. Their past won't be an issue, he seems to have moved on. Shifting the focus, Joo brings up the mystery man Mubai drunkenly mentioned during their night at the bar. Caught off guard, Mubai is surprised by just how much she revealed. On her way home, Mubai listens to Jeon's radio interview. His reviews have become harsher, but he insists he's just being objective. While Mubai worries he's pushing too far, Jeon enjoys the success and fame that come with it. Meanwhile, Jun confides in his best friend, feeling lost and unsure if he should give up on music. Joo is a successful scriptwriter, and Jeon is thriving as a critic, but what about him? Jeon reassures him, confident that Jun's breakthrough is just around the corner. Jeon lifts Jun's spirits, but soon faces his own crisis. When news breaks of director Koo's suicide attempt, Jeon rushes to the hospital, only to be swarmed by reporters. They blame his harsh review for the incident, leaving him shaken. Meanwhile, Mubai reads the online backlash against Jeon and grows increasingly worried. Jeon has dinner with director Ma, who reassures him that everything will be fine. Mubai joins them, invited by director Ma, but he soon steps away, leaving her alone with Jeon. She notices his odd behavior, but before she can ask about it, director Kim Yong-woo interrupts. Still bitter about Jeon's harsh review, Kim berates him for being out drinking after director Koo's suicide attempt. Frustrated, Mubai drags Jeon outside, confronting him about his selfish attitude. She wasn't blaming him. People who do that are just trying to shift responsibility, but she's worried about him nonetheless. After finishing his shift at Vide Bar, Jun finds Joo waiting for him outside. He finally gives her an answer: he'll work on her movie. This project will be his big break, and he vows to surpass her success. Meanwhile, Mubai visits director Koo in the hospital, where he quickly recognizes her. He clears up the rumors, explaining that his overdose was accidental, caused by mixing sleeping pills with alcohol, not a suicide attempt. Mubai is relieved. Losing him would have deepened her resentment toward movies. Director Koo brings up her father, suggesting he would be proud to see her thriving as a director. Mubai isn't the only one visiting director Koo. Jeon has been stopping by too. She finds him sitting alone in the dimly lit hospital lobby and crouches in front of him, asking what he's doing. Jeon quietly replies that he's waiting for something good to happen. Just like before, when Mubai appeared on a rainy day and fixed his windshield wipers, she's here again, his little bit of luck after a streak of misfortune. Mubai admits she has a soft spot for pitiful things, and right now, Jeon is exactly that. So, she sits beside him, and together, they rest. For once, everything is still. Jeon finally lets himself accept her presence, her help, and maybe even a little comfort. Mubai always thought Jeon was a little strange. 5 years ago, on set for director Ma's movie, he showed he cared in small ways, carrying props, sneaking snacks into her coat, switching seats so she could have some quiet. Maybe she was the weird one for noticing. One snowy night, filming was cancelled, and the crew left without her. Everyone except Jeon, who waited. When she asked why, he simply said, "Because I like you." "Can't I like you?" She was touched by his words. But 5 years later, when he confessed again, she turned him down. She couldn't go through it all again. Jeon confides in his brother while they stand outside, looking at Mubai's house. He worries she doesn't like him, and it stings even more when Jung-hoo walks out of her house. Meanwhile, Mubai can't stop thinking about Jeon either. His confession kept her up all night. Jeon pulls Jung-hoo aside and questions him about Mubai. Realizing Jeon has a crush, Jung-hoo teases him, reminding him that he's not Mubai's type. Elsewhere, Si-jun reads the melody script in his studio. Ju-ah visits Mubai's office, excited that Si-jun has agreed to produce music for her movie. She assures Mubai that their past won't affect work. Later, Jeon grabs drinks with director Ma and director Kim. Jeon and director Kim make amends, with Jeon explaining that writing is open to interpretation. Left alone at the table, director Kim admits he plans to quit directing. He'd rather leave while he still loves movies than stay and grow to hate them. On her way home from work, Mubai runs into Jun, and they walk together. It's not their first meeting. She once stood up for him after a motorcyclist caused an accident and refused to apologize. Mubai had insisted on fairness, making sure Jun got the apology he deserved. This time, their conversation flows more easily. Jun notes how much Mubai resembles her mother, while Mubai points out how different Jun and Jeon are. Jun admires Jeon's carefree and humorous nature but recognizes it as a shield. He wishes his brother could truly relax. He knows Jeon has a lot on his mind. Jeon can't stop thinking about Mubai. After a night of drinking with director Ma and Kim, he tries calling her, but she still has his number blocked. So, he decides on another approach. The next morning, Jeon wakes up to find his brother sitting in his room, wearing Mubai's cardigan. Flashback to 2 a.m. Jeon, drunk and desperate for Mubai's attention, is making a scene outside her house. Jun hears the noise and goes to stop him, only to find Mubai already outside, clearly annoyed. She tells Jeon to go home, but not before he snatches her cardigan. By morning, Mubai storms in, takes her cardigan back, and warns Jeon never to pull a stunt like that again, or she'll call the police. Jeon, in his delusional optimism, takes it as a good sign. She didn't call the police, so maybe she doesn't hate him that much. Back at home, Mubai's mom updates her on a request from her dad's friend, Jun-sang. Si-jun finds Jeon and Ju-ah in his studio and is annoyed. Just because he agreed to the movie doesn't mean Ju-ah can drop by any time. But she insists. They need to discuss the music, and the director still has final approval. Wait, who's the director? Jeon checks the script. It's Mubai. He pushes Si-jun and Ju-ah to get along for the film. Then, in classic Jeon fashion, he announces he has a crush. No one cares. After Si-jun leaves, Ju-ah apologizes for not visiting him in 5 years. Jeon brushes it off. Instead, he grins. Tell me about Mubai. Mubai contemplates Jun-sang's request while Jung-hoo strikes a deal with Jeon. He'll set up a chance for him to be with Mubai in exchange for a movie night. The perfect opportunity arises. An annual outdoor screening once organized by Mubai's father. This year, Mubai's own movie is being showcased, and Jung-hoo plans to take her. Jeon seizes the chance, showing up early to help set up. It feels like old times. He teases Mubai every chance he gets. As night falls, the screening begins. Jun joins Jeon, followed by Mubai, her mom, and Jung-hoo. Hesitant at first, Mubai eventually sits with them, sharing food and memories under the stars. As the night goes on, Mubai realizes she's the only one left sitting with Jeon. Jun, Jung-hoo, and Mom have quietly disappeared. She sneaks glances at Jeon, who remains engrossed in the movie, even though he's seen it multiple times. When she asks why, he simply says that each viewing feels different, just like his feelings for her. Unlike 5 years ago at the bus stop, this time, he openly admits he's flirting. Mubai is reminded of her father and fears Jeon will disappear just like he did. She doesn't trust him yet and refuses to get her hopes up. Overwhelmed, she stands to leave, but Jeon gently grabs her wrist, stopping her. Behind them, the ocean shimmers under the night sky, mirroring the emotions between them. Joo-ah visits Si-jun at Vide Bar, urging him to set personal feelings aside and work with her professionally. She insists she's dealing with the same struggles he is. After closing up, Si-jun finds her waiting outside. Annoyed, he tries to prove a point, forcing a kiss on her. She shoves him away, and he coldly tells her to stop testing him. Tears welling up, Joo-ah throws her bag at him, but he returns moments later to hand it back. He admits he needs time to heal, to process their breakup, to figure things out on his own terms. Her sudden reappearance has unsettled him, making him question if they ever truly understood each other, which might be why they fell apart in the first place. At the outdoor screening, Jeon chases after Mubai, but she's still hurt by his disappearance. He gave her hope, only to leave her feeling foolish. She doesn't trust him or want to get hurt again. Jeon, ever delusional, takes this as a confession and is relieved. He wasn't joking when he said he liked her. Why does she keep denying her feelings? What is she so afraid of? He thought he made it clear back then, and he makes it clear again now. He likes her. Mubai wants to believe him but hesitates. Jeon pulls her into a hug, their embrace mirroring the couple on the movie screen behind them. Movies have always been Jeon's escape, his constant, no matter what. Life could be uncertain, but movies remained. And in a way, he feels like he's living in one. Not an action flick, a comedy, or a campus drama, but a melodrama. He still remembers the moment 5 years ago when he first saw Mubai on set while returning director Ma's shoes. He was already drawn to her, but watching her interact so warmly with the child actors deepened his feelings. If his story with Mubai is a movie, then it deserves a happy ending. The next morning, Mubai shares breakfast with her mom and asks what she saw in her father. To her surprise, Mom reveals she liked him just as much. She wasn't just the one being pursued. Then, shifting to Jeon, Mom advises Mubai to stop pretending to dislike what she actually loves. If she truly likes Jeon, she shouldn't leave him hanging, or he might walk away for good. Meanwhile, Jeon visits Si-jun's studio, hoping to vent about Mubai, but Si-jun isn't in the mood. So, Jeon changes the subject to Joo-ah and finds a movie ticket Si-jun kept from her film. He realizes Si-jun, just like himself, doesn't fully understand love, especially since the movie was basically about him and Joo-ah. Jeon visits director Ma's office and notices he looks unwell. Director Ma has just returned from the funeral of a young crew member who died from overwork, just like Mubai's father. Though his passing drew attention at the time, little has changed. This is the first time Jeon hears the full story about Mubai's dad. Meanwhile, Mubai learns her movie's budget is being cut, so they must find ways to save money, including producing original music instead of paying for copyrighted songs. Just then, Joo-ah arrives, basically treating Mubai's office as her own now. Mubai asks to meet the songwriter for the project, none other than Si-jun. Joo-ah also overhears Mubai on a call with Jeon and suspects she knows exactly who's on the other end. Jeon calls Mubai during her meeting with Joo-ah, inviting her out for pizza. He tells her he'll be waiting at their neighborhood pizza joint, no pressure. If she wants, she can just walk by and ignore him, or she can choose to join him. So Jeon waits, and waits. Just when it seems like all hope is lost, Mubai shows up. Wow, what a small neighborhood, what are the odds? Who would have thought Mubai would just happen to run into Jeon here? Ha ha, she digs into her Hawaiian pizza, while he sticks to his pepperoni. Between bites, he casually says he hopes they'll run into each other more often from now on. First, the pizza joint. Then, Jeon's house. A barbecue. A shared umbrella, a convenience store meetup, each coincidental encounter drawing Mu-bai closer. She even joins Jeon and Jun for movie night, catching his stolen glances. She's falling, despite herself. One night, walking home alone, she feels his absence until he pops out of the bushes, pretending to bid farewell to someone. Amused, Mu-bai wonders where they'll, accidentally, meet next. Before parting, Jeon grins. Want to run into each other by chance again tomorrow? 6 p.m. In front of the takoyaki place. That's where Mu-bai and Jeon will accidentally meet next. Later, Mu-bai reads an article about accidents on movie sets, reminding her of her father's tragic death. Just then, a text from Jeon. Got home safe. Going to sleep. She often sees her father in Jeon, fearing he'll meet the same fate. But this time, his message reassures her. For once, she allows herself to rest. Jun wraps up a recording session with Rim, a vocalist singing one of his songs. They step out for coffee, where they coincidentally run into Ju-ah, though she was actually in the area to see Jun. The reunion is awkward, but before they can talk, Jun steps away for a call. Ju-ah chats with Rim and realizes she's not Jun's girlfriend. Jun still isn't over her. Back at his studio, Ju-ah listens to the unfinished Ost. Jun hesitates, but Ju-ah, recalling their past, encourages him to sing it himself. As they step into the recording room, the door jams. They're stuck. No phones. No way out. And his not-so-subtle, coincidental, meetups with Mu-bai. Meanwhile, trapped in the recording room, Jun and Ju-ah talk about their work, mirroring their own feelings of being stuck. Ju-ah is curious about Rim, but Jun clarifies Rim knew about Ju-ah because he always talked about her, whether in frustration or longing. Then comes the real debate. Who confessed first? Ju-ah's movie suggests the female lead asked first, but Jun remembers it differently. They bicker, reminiscing about high school when Jun officially asked her out, though Ju-ah insists she liked him long before that. Their argument is cut short when Jeon, hilariously vibing to studio music, finally notices them and gets them out. But he doesn't stick around long after all. He's got another, coincidental, meeting with Mu-bai to get to. Mu-bai waits at the takoyaki place, but Jeon never shows. Earlier that evening, on his way to meet her, Jeon stops to buy flowers but is forced to abandon his plans when he sees Jun crossing a busy street, unaware of the danger. Jeon rushes to save him just in time. Back home, he realizes something unsettling. Jun isn't scared. Just like after his accident 5 years ago, he remains eerily calm. Jun brushes it off, but Jeon can't. Overwhelmed, he steps outside to process everything, forgetting all about his coincidental meeting with Mu-bai. Mu-bai, left waiting all night, eventually walks home alone, disappointment sinking in. But as she reflects, doubt creeps in. Was it something she did? Maybe her mother was right. Maybe she should have been kinder to Jeon. Could that be why he didn't come? The next morning, Jeon wakes up to find Jun curled up beside him, just like when they were kids. Jun playfully teases him, trying to lighten the mood. He doesn't want last night's incident to linger. With a small smile, he apologizes to his little brother. Later, Jung-woo joins them for breakfast. Jeon struggles to text Mu-bai, but before he can send anything, she shows up looking stunning. She has a request. She needs to go somewhere for work and wants Jeon to accompany her. Jung-woo could do it, but conveniently he's busy. Jeon, of course, is always ready to spend time with Mu-bai. They hop into his sleek red car and drive off, while Jung-woo stays behind with Jun. But as they settle in for a movie, Jung-woo notices something. Jun looks more exhausted than usual. Gently, he tucks him into bed. As they wait for help, Jeon teases, "You must have really wanted to hang out with me." Mu-bai gazes at the golden fields. "I don't like getting close to people. Once I start caring, I can't stop. And in the end, they always leave. So I didn't want to know more about you." She turns to him. "But the thing I hate most is when someone disappears without a word. And even though you did, I still like you." A small smile, a quiet decision. "So I just decided to let things get complicated." Jun sets his chopsticks down, his expression unreadable. "Jeon, Still riding the high of last night's romance, barely notices at first. I have something to tell you, Jun says quietly. What is it? Jun hesitates, then exhales. And then, he finally speaks. Jeon thinks about his bond with his brother. Jun became Jeon's guardian at just 20 years old. He wasn't ready for it, but he did what he had to do to take care of him. Jun was never surprised by anything, and nothing ever made him happy. He never wanted much in life. He was always kind, especially to little kids. But sometimes, he would get lost in deep thoughts, making it hard for people to understand him. The only thing that made him feel emotions was movies. He would cry a lot while watching them. Even when he got into a car accident and his car fell into the river, he still wasn't surprised. Jeon tries to understand Jun's accident. The police say it was due to fog and rain, but no matter how many times Jeon drives in the same conditions, it doesn't make sense. There are no CCTV cameras, and Jun's black box shows no other cars nearby. It feels like Jun didn't want to live. Jeon writes his thoughts in his journal. Later, Jun tells Jeon about his health. He has been skipping therapy, which explains his dizziness and falls. Jeon listens but doesn't believe him and eats his breakfast in silence. After breakfast, Jeon sits outside to think. Mu-bai steps out of her house and visits him. Jeon hugs her right away. They talk about nicknames and go for a walk before she leaves for work. Jun wakes up and sees Jung-hoo at his house since Jeon stepped out. He still isn't feeling well and has to sit down before he falls. Jung-hoo checks on him, but Jun says he's fine. The truth is, his health is getting worse, and without treatment, he could die. At the office, Mu-bai meets Ju-ah to review the movie script. She then talks with Si-jun about the movie's music and teases him about his relationship with Ju-ah. But Si-jun knows about Mu-bai and Jeon too. Mu-bai wanted to keep it a secret, but Ju-ah overhears and finds out anyway. Jeon stops by Mom's meat market to confirm the dating rumors. He and Mu-bai are together. Mom is confused since Mu-bai had said earlier that they weren't dating, but she quickly accepts it. She questions Jeon, asking about his weakness. When he says he has too many thoughts, Mom tells him that's not a weakness. Jeon explains that he doesn't know how to deal with them. Mom gives him advice. Good people get sick. Share your thoughts with others. Say mean or pathetic things sometimes. It might help, and someone may even try to help you. Meanwhile, Ju-ah and Si-jun grab udon together. Si-jun eats quickly, and Ju-ah tells him he can leave if he wants. He never liked waiting when they dated. She then lists all the things she did for him back then. Watching Star Wars, soccer, and building Legos. She only did them because she liked him. But things have changed. She fell out of love, and now, there's nothing between them. Jeon, Jun, and Jung-hoo head to a restaurant for dinner. On the way, they run into Mu-bai and invite her to join since she has no friends. At dinner, Jung-hoo struggles to accept Jeon and Mu-bai's relationship. Meanwhile, Si-jun reflects on the past and watches Ju-ah's favorite movie, the one she mentioned earlier. Jun suggests a trip, surprising Jeon, but he happily agrees. The brothers take a drive in Jeon's red car. Jun also spends time with Sang-sik, Si-jun, and Ju-ah at Sang-sik's bar and watches movies with Jeon, Mu-bai, and the group. During the movie, Jeon sneaks a glance at Jun and sees him smiling, something rare. He isn't sure how to feel. Later, Jeon calls Mu-bai while she's driving to scout a filming location. She tells him she's proud of him for taking care of Jun. It's not easy. If he ever needs to talk, she'll be there for him. That night, Jeon and Jun have a deep conversation at home. Jeon confronts Jun about his sudden urge to go on trips and try new things. It's not like him. Jun insists he just wants to experience what he never has, but Jeon finds it strange how rushed everything feels. The tea kettle whistles, briefly breaking the tension. Jeon pours them tea, but the moment of calm doesn't last. Jun admits he's preparing Jeon, just in case he dies. This frustrates Jeon. He took care of Jun after his accident, and now his brother is planning for his own death. Once again, Jun is thinking about Jeon instead of himself, and Jeon is tired of it. The hot tea spills onto Jeon's hand, but he doesn't react. His mind is on one thing. He finally asks, have you ever wanted to die? Or should I ask, have you ever wanted to live? Jun says he does want to live, but Jeon doesn't believe him. Jun can do whatever he wants, live or die. But Jeon, he will do whatever it takes to keep his brother alive. He can't lose him. Later that night, in the pouring rain, Mubai arrives home and finds Jeon standing alone on the street, waiting for her. She steps out of the car and, though he's already soaked, she holds her umbrella over both of them as they walk home together. The painful night comes to an end. A few mornings later, Jung-woo helps Jeon pack some of Jun's belongings before they head to the hospital. While sorting through his things, Jeon stumbles upon Jun's journal and, out of curiosity, begins to read. I thought I had no will of my own. But, Jeon, when you cried out for me, as if it was always just the two of us against the world, that changed. For the first time, I had a choice, and I chose you. The weight of that choice was heavy at times, but I never regretted it. You were my reason to keep going. There were things I liked, things I wanted to do, but above all, I had you. Jeon, my life often felt like being underwater, unable to tell if I was sinking or floating. The mistake I made back then, that was the one thing I wanted to hide from you. But there's only one reason I open my eyes every morning. I really do want to live again now, Jeon. As Jeon reads, memories of their childhood flood back, Jun always looking after him, teaching him, protecting him. Jun had been more than a brother, he had been Jeon's entire world. And when Jun woke up after his accident, grown-up Jeon was at his side. But for a brief moment, Jun saw the little boy who had always needed him. To Jun, no matter how much time passes, Jeon will always be his little brother. Jeon breaks down in tears as he reads Jun's journal. His gaze drifts to a framed photo on Jun's desk, a snapshot of them at Jeon's high school graduation. The memory unfolds, showing a time when life felt simpler and full of promise. With tear-filled eyes, Jeon now stares at Jun's funeral portrait resting atop the casket. The promises they made to each other remain unfulfilled. Jun never got to be discharged, and Jeon never got to take him on that trip. Mubai wanted to make a Melo movie. As a child, she never cared for love. She thought it was silly and didn't understand why her dad loved romantic films. But over time, she started to enjoy them. When Jeon entered her life, it all made sense. She still doesn't fully understand love, but she knows people need it, especially those who have lost someone. Jeon stands outside his house, afraid to step in. His brother is gone, and nothing feels the same. Time passes, and Jeon continues with his life. He thought Jun's death would change everything, but it didn't. Director Ma and Jua offer support, and see Jun wants to help but doesn't know how. Through it all, Mubai stays by Jeon's side. They take walks, share meals, and talk late into the night. But sometimes, Jeon drifts into his thoughts, and anxiety creeps in. One night, as they walk home, Mubai notices it again. This time, she stops and looks into his eyes, trying to send him a silent message. After a few seconds, they hug warmly and say goodnight. As Mubai enters her house, she peeks out the window, watching Jeon go inside. Jun gets an unexpected visit from his older brother, who stops by to give money to Jeon after hearing about Jun's death. Jun is shocked. That's all he has to offer. No words of comfort, but his brother isn't moved. Jun had been sick for a while, so his death wasn't unexpected. He also gives Jun some cash before leaving. The contrast between him and Jun is clear. Meanwhile, Jua and Mubai meet to discuss the movie script. The story reflects Jua's own feelings. The female lead moves on quickly after a breakup, but Jua argues that some people just pretend to be okay while hurting inside. She then asks Mubai to stay by Jeon's side. He's never been the type to rely on anyone before. Jeon spends time at Director Ma's office, chatting casually. Director Ma is still stressed about his career, but something else seems to weigh on him. He offers Jeon words of support, understanding his pain. You know, that's the thing about loss. At first, it doesn't hit you because so much is happening. But when you really need that person and realize they're gone, that's when the pain truly sets in. It's a pain beyond words. And when it comes, there's no avoiding it. You just have to face it. When that happens, don't be alone, okay? Jeon brushes it off, keeping up his usual cheerful act. But deep down, the pain of losing his brother still lingers, no matter how much time has passed. At Vide Bar, Sang-sik checks in with Si-jun about Jeon. He suggests closing early to visit him, but Si-jun refuses, using work as an excuse. Sang-sik doesn't push but reminds Si-jun to check on his friend. Meanwhile, Mu-bai stands outside her house, staring at Jeon's across the street. Jung-woo joins her, and they talk about Jeon. She's worried but doesn't want to overstep if he still needs space. Jung-woo then asks about her own loss. Mu-bai says she's fine now, but back when she lost her father, she had no one to rely on. Jung-woo feels guilty for not being there and gives her a hug. After he leaves, Mu-bai stays outside, still thinking about Jeon. Ju-ah visits Vide Bar to spend time with Si-jun. She finds out he still hasn't reached out to Jeon and urges him to do so. Even if he isn't good with words, just being there is enough, Jeon will understand. But Si-jun hesitates, afraid he'll say the wrong thing and make things worse. Ju-ah disagrees. Sure, he can be blunt, but his sincerity always shows. They share a drink from a bottle left behind by a couple who never returned. Si-jun assumes they won't come back, just like many others who left bottles behind. Ju-ah playfully bets that one of those couples will return soon. As they drink, they reminisce about Jun, laughing, remembering, and honoring his memory. The moment is simple, yet full of warmth and unspoken understanding. Mu-bai wakes up from her nap to find messages from Jeon. He asks how her movie is going. She peeks out her window and sees his house dark, assuming he's asleep. She goes back to editing. The next morning, she finds Jeon sitting in his red car. It suddenly clicks, he's been sleeping there since Jun's death. The house is too empty, too quiet. There's no one to come home to. Jeon reassures her that he'll be fine. His car isn't comfortable anyway, and he should clean up his house. Mu-bai gives him space and heads to work. Day by day, they focus on their own routines, keeping busy with work. That scene is absolutely heartbreaking yet so beautifully tender. The way Mu-bai offers her quiet, unwavering support to Jeon, just being there with him, no pressure, no expectations, makes it all the more moving. Her transmitting tactic, the silent understanding between them, and the raw vulnerability of holding hands with tears in their eyes, it's such a perfect moment of love and comfort. And then that final whisper, "When tomorrow comes, let's go home together." That line alone carries so much weight. It's not just about stepping back into a house, it's about facing grief, moving forward, and allowing someone to be there through the pain. Mu-bai moving in, even temporarily, feels like such a natural and heartwarming step. It's sweet how she frames it as a preview of their future together, lighthearted, yet deeply meaningful in the context of Jeon's grief. Having her around gives him a sense of warmth and home again, something he's been missing. Plus, her excitement about his cooking is adorable. And Si-jun losing his bet. Haha, that's such a fun little moment to balance out the heavy emotions from earlier. The fact that the couple broke up and got back together makes it even funnier, almost like a reminder that love, in all its forms, is unpredictable but persistent. Si-jun texting Ju-ah under the pretense of his new song. Classic move. He totally just wants to see her, and she probably sees right through it. Mu-bai's panic at not finding Jeon shows just how much she truly cares, and when she finally sees him, the flood of emotions is overwhelming. The symbolism of her blowing out the candle, as if removing the last bit of isolation he was clinging to, is so powerful. And Jeon accepting her hand, followed by their tearful embrace, is such a beautiful culmination of their shared pain, healing, and love. They've both been lonely for so long, but now, in each other, they've finally found home. This moment between Si-jun and Ju-ah is so beautifully bittersweet. It perfectly captures the uncertainty of rekindled relationships, the tension between what once was and what could be. Si-jun's question isn't just about defining their relationship, it's a plea for clarity, for understanding where they stand after everything. Ju-ah's silence speaks volumes. It's not a simple yes or no because feelings don't always fit into clear-cut answers. Ju-ah always put Si-jun first. She supported him through everything, but he never did the same for her. When she wanted to pursue screenwriting, he only focused on himself. She tried to be the best partner she could, but it became too much. Even though he was the love of her life, she knew she had to leave. Si-jun, on the other hand, was grateful for Ju-ah. She loved him as he was, encouraged him, and made him work harder. He even took on extra jobs to support them. But after the breakup, everything changed. He buried himself in music, trying to move on. Then Ju-ah came back, reopening old wounds. A part of him wants to hurt her like she hurt him, but another part hopes they still have a chance. Si-jun suggests a way to test their feelings, 3 dates to decide where their relationship stands. Ju-ah hesitates but agrees. Meanwhile, Mu-bai spends the night at Gyeom's house. As she sleeps, Gyeom sits beside her, watching her for a moment before dozing off. In the morning, he wakes up to find her in a strange sleeping position. Sensing she's awake, they share a soft, heart-fluttering kiss. Mu-bai enjoys living with Gyeom, until they run into her mom outside his house. Shocked, her mom says nothing and walks away, pretending she didn't see them. So much for their perfect setup. Si-jun and Ju-ah meet for their first date. Ju-ah arrives first, and as Si-jun approaches, memories of their high school days flash through her mind. They exchange an awkward greeting before Si-jun takes her hand, and they walk off together. At work, Mu-bai learns from PD Ha that her movie's budget has been cut, putting production at risk of cancellation. Meanwhile, Gyeom finally cleans up his house, but everything reminds him of his brother. He turns down Jun's photos and throws out his favorite chair, wheelchair, and crutches. While doing so, Jung-woo confronts him, asking why he's discarding Jun's belongings. Gyeom insists it was bound to happen sooner or later, but Jung-woo offers advice. Having faced death multiple times, he understands the pain of those left behind. He tells Gyeom not to rush his grief, he should take his time and mourn at his own pace. Mu-bai's mom checks in on her, wanting to see how she's doing. Mu-bai shares that her project was cancelled after investors pulled out, but she isn't too worried. She plans to take a break and find another movie later. Unlike her dad, she won't go into debt just to make a film. Mom is shocked by the comment and defends him. How could Mu-bai say that? He was proud of her. But Mu-bai argues that he never cared about them and that Mom had to sacrifice so much because of him. It's clear she still resents her father. She hates him just as much as she hates her own name. Gyeom spends time with Si-jun to avoid being home alone. While there, Si-jun hands him a bottle of alcohol that belonged to Jun. Gyeom is surprised. He never knew Jun used to drink at the bar. But then again, there were many things about his brother he didn't know. Si-jun tells him that Jun's life was his own, and no one, not even Gyeom, had the right to decide how he should have lived. He encourages Gyeom to do the same and live life on his own terms. Before leaving, Gyeom teases Si-jun about Ju-ah and heads home. Outside his house, he hesitates before going in, even glancing up at Mu-bai's place. Meanwhile, Mu-bai, still upset after arguing with her mom about her dad, re-watches one of his movies. Just like before, she still finds it boring. Mu-bai visits director Ma to talk about her cancelled project. Since he has been through similar situations, she hopes for some advice. Director Ma tells her that when his projects were cancelled, he accepted it and moved on. But his case was different. He had experience and a strong resume. For Mu-bai, who is still new to directing, giving up isn't an option. If she doesn't fight for her story, who will? She needs to do whatever it takes to make her movie happen. The decision is hers. Later, director Ma tells Gyeom about Mu-bai's cancelled movie. Gyeom is surprised. Mu-bai hadn't mentioned it. He assumes she just needs time to process everything. As he heads back inside, a neighbor asks if she can take Jun's favorite chair. But Gyeom refuses and takes the chair back home with him. Ju-ah finds Si-jun near his studio and tells him about their cancelled movie. Si-jun already knows and isn't surprised. Things rarely work out for him anyway. Since they're together, he suggests they go on their second date, which ends up being at his studio. Ju-ah, upset over the cancellation, listens to a song Si-jun had made for the movie to lift her mood. But he interrupts to share an update. He's quitting music. He's tired. He doesn't have what it takes to succeed. and he's exhausted from Ju-ah constantly praising him. It only gives him false hope that there's still something between them. Ju-ah is shocked and hurt. She's close to tears and storms out of the studio. A few seconds later, Si-jun chases after her, but she's already gone. Mu-bai reviews her notes on her cancelled movie and is reminded of director Ma's advice: if she doesn't tell her story, who will? It's the same thing her father used to say when she was a child. Exhausted, she closes her eyes for a moment but wakes up in a sweat from a nightmare. Needing air, she steps outside and reaches for a cigarette, only to remember she quit. Smoking doesn't help anymore, but there is something, or rather someone, who can. Jeon. He pulls up in his red car, just like he always does when she needs him. 5 years ago, she told him she'd reach out if she ever needed his help. And now, she finally has. For Jeon to help her, he needs to be near her. Without hesitation, they embrace. Then, hand in hand, they walk to his car. Last time, Mu-bai was the one holding Jeon up. This time, it's his turn to catch her before she falls. Si-jun searches for Ju-ah all night and finally finds her. They argue about their past. Ju-ah is upset that Si-jun saw her support as a burden. She loved him and believed in him, but for Si-jun, that belief became pressure. It suffocated him. Ju-ah knows this selfish side of him. He always put himself first. He never truly cared for her. Si-jun is still stuck in the past, unable to move on from their breakup. But Ju-ah has changed. She is no longer the same person he once loved. They hold each other and cry, realizing the pain is still fresh. Mu-bai's voice narrates their story. Mu-bai and Jeon take a night drive in his red car. She's still down about her cancelled movie, but Jeon isn't worried. He believes she'll find a way to make it happen. He asks why she wanted to make a Melo movie 5 years ago. Mu-bai says she just wanted to tell the sweetest love story because all she ever wanted was to be loved. Jeon always loved movies because they made anything possible. They were his escape, his light at the end of the tunnel. But in reality, life felt heavy and lonely. Then Mu-bai came along, and everything changed. He realizes it's not movies he loves anymore, it's her. During their night drive, Mu-bai finally shares her secret. She believes she's the reason her father died. Her resentment started young. He was never there, not even for her birthday. It was easier to hate him. All she ever wanted was his love, but he never gave it. To her, he was already gone. Yet, despite her anger, she hated seeing him cry. It confused her. How could she despise him yet still feel his pain? Years later, in high school, Mu-bai got a call from her dad. He promised to be there for her birthday the next day, apologizing for all the years he had neglected her. She pleaded with him to leave the film set and come home right away if he truly meant it. But that night, Mu-bai and her mom received the devastating news: her dad had died in a car accident. Now, in the present, Mu-bai breaks down in the car with Jeon. She had said so many hurtful things to her father, but she never meant them. It was just how she coped with her pain. She never wanted him gone. As her tears fall, Jeon simply holds her hand, offering silent comfort. No words are needed. His presence is enough, and Mu-bai continues to cry. Jeon and Mu-bai sit in the car, watching the stars. The night is calm and peaceful, just the two of them. Mu-bai, having shared her secret, asks Jeon for his. Even if it's painful, she wants to know. Jeon admits that as a child, he loved movies because he feared being alone. Later, they became something he enjoyed with Jun. His fear of abandonment made him always cheerful, afraid that showing any other emotion might drive Jun away. Even after learning the truth about Jun's accident, he acted as if everything was fine. As two people who have lost loved ones, Mu-bai and Jeon agree, death is cruel. Losing someone you love hurts. Mu-bai returns home early in the morning and heads straight to her room. Her mom notices that she seems down. At Vide Bar, Si-jun asks Sang-sik what he thought of his relationship with Ju-ah. Sang-sik says Ju-ah seemed more like a fangirl than a girlfriend, always supporting and following Si-jun. But he could also tell how much Si-jun liked her. They were a rare kind of couple, young, naive, and full of love. Si-jun wonders what truly defines love. Marriage. Dying together. Sang-sik simply says, love is already complete as is. If Si-jun believed his love with Ju-ah was real, he should accept it without regret. Later, Ju-ah takes out a box filled with memories, photos, cards, and souvenirs from their time together. As she looks through them, she laughs and cries, overwhelmed by the special moments they once shared. Jeon stops by Mu-bai's house to deliver a bouquet of flowers to her mom. But instead of just one, he brings a whole wagon full, making mom laugh at the unexpected gesture. While she appreciates the flowers, planting them all by herself would be a challenge, so Jeon rolls up his sleeves and helps her. As they work, they catch up. The last time they spoke was at mom's meat market. She asks if Jeon has overcome his habit of overthinking and not having anyone to talk to. He reassures her that he's changed, he's no longer as anxious and worrisome. But there are still moments when he wants to say something to someone who is no longer here. What should he do then? Mom gently tells him that even if a person is gone physically, they're still with him in spirit. As someone who has also lost a loved one, she understands his pain. She then asks Jeon to take care of Mu-bai, since she worries just as much as he does. Mu-bai wakes up to an empty house. Mom has already left for work. As she eats breakfast alone at the dining table, her phone buzzes with a text from Jeon. It's a selfie of him and mom from earlier that morning, taken in front of the flowers he planted. Seeing the two most precious people in her life together in one photo fills Mu-bai's heart. She is truly loved. That night, Mu-bai sits outside alone when mom returns from work. She joins her daughter, and they start talking about dad. Mom admits he was miserable for most of his life but never gave up on movies because he wanted to show Mu-bai the importance of perseverance. She tells Mu-bai she is more like her father than she realizes, kind and warm-hearted. That's why mom wants her to keep making movies, to keep his memory alive. Then, mom apologizes. She wishes she had been a better, kinder parent. If she had, maybe Mu-bai wouldn't have been so sad growing up. She tried her best. Picking Mu-bai up from school fights, going to movies she didn't understand, even signing Christmas cards in dad's name, just to make her daughter feel loved. The morning after dad's funeral, she had made tea and watched Mu-bai sleep, crying silently for both her husband and her daughter's pain. Hearing this, Mu-bai realizes how much mom has done for her. She regrets not seeing it sooner. She wasn't alone, it had always been the two of them. Mom apologizes for not being enough. Mu-bai apologizes for not appreciating her enough. They embrace, crying together. At last, they understand each other. From now on, they will live a happier life, together. The next morning, Jeon sells all his VHS movie tapes to Jung-hoo, a huge movie fan. Jung-hoo hesitates at first. There's an entire wagon full, but he ends up taking them home. Another wagon of movies. That goes to director Ma. Meanwhile, Ju-ah visits Mu-bai, determined to find a way to save their cancelled movie. If it were just her, she could let it go. But someone else is involved, someone she cares about. Mu-bai and Ju-ah head to Si-jun's studio. Mu-bai asks why he sent her the song he made for the movie. Si-jun says there was no deep reason, composing it made him feel good and reignited his love for music. Mu-bai encourages him to keep going. She'll find a way to make the movie happen, and she hopes Ju-ah and Si-jun will stick with her. After Mu-bai leaves, Ju-ah tells Si-jun she truly hopes he won't give up on music. Si-jun follows Ju-ah out of the studio, stopping in a quiet park. He's not just quitting music, he's ending their relationship for good. He hopes they never see each other again. It won't be easy, and he wonders if Ju-ah will miss him. But Ju-ah reassures him. Time will pass. They'll move on. Their time together was special, but it's over. Si-jun sheds tears, struggling to imagine a future without her. Ju-ah gives him one last kiss before he finds the strength to walk away. She watches as the distance between them grows, crying as he disappears. Later, Jeon finally steps into Jun's bedroom. Sitting on his brother's bed, he discovers an empty cigarette pack while doing laundry. On the patio, he drinks from Jun's whiskey bottle and awkwardly smokes a cigarette, unaccustomed to the habit. Then, Jun appears and silently sits beside him. The two brothers share a quiet smoke together. Jeon realizes, just like with the whiskey, there was so much about Jun he never knew. Jeon looks at Jun and asks for a favor. He hopes Jun will visit him in his dreams from time to time. No nagging, no scolding, just spending time together like before. As he speaks, tears well up in his eyes. He leans into Jun's shoulder, sobbing. It hurts knowing that no matter how much he calls out for his brother, Jun won't be there anymore. But for Jun, who always worried about him and did his best as a brother, Jeon reassures him. He'll be okay. Jun doesn't have to worry anymore. He had a happy life because of him, and now, he'll try to live the best life he can. While waiting at the bus stop, Mubai is lost in thought when Jeon approaches and hands her some corn, just like 5 years ago. She's still stressed about finding an investor for her movie, but Jeon knew she wouldn't give up. He's proud of her for fighting for her dream and even offers to help fund the movie with the money from selling his VHS tapes. Mubai is surprised. Why is he selling them? Jeon explains that he's a bit tired of movies and wants to explore new things. He's even quitting his job as a movie critic. Curious, Mubai asks if he ever reviewed her movie. He confirms that he did, but since he doesn't have the post on his phone, he offers to tell her his thoughts in person. Nervous, Mubai only wants to hear the good parts. Jeon laughs, and they share a warm, playful moment together. Jeon takes a moment to reflect on his life and the lessons he has learned. When I was young, I wished to be 20 overnight because being young didn't make hardships any easier. Then, at 20, I wanted to be 30, thinking I needed to get through those years to toughen myself against pain. But even in my 30s, nothing really changed. Instead, I started missing the moments I once wished would pass quickly. So now, I'm going to live every moment fully. Life moves forward for everyone, and a year and 6 months pass. Jeon applies for a job at a travel agency, mostly because, well, and just like during his first movie audition with director Ma, he's absolutely convinced he'll get hired this time. Mubai's movie was finally made. While it didn't dominate the box office, the people who did love it really loved it. It was also a different kind of project for her, more artsy than her usual style. But the biggest surprise, Jun's soundtrack for the film became a massive hit. His music ended up outshining the movie itself. As for Ju-ah, she's still writing scripts, and she and Jun are still expertly avoiding each other. And in a sweet little twist, Jeon no longer lives alone. Jung-hoo has moved in with him. That night, Jeon hosts a special barbecue dinner at his house. Mubai and Mom make their way across the street to join him and Jung-hoo, and director Ma arrives soon after. Thanks to his investment, Mubai's movie was able to come to life, so there's plenty to celebrate. The group gathers in Jeon's front yard, enjoying the warm atmosphere, the delicious food, and each other's company. Meanwhile, Ju-ah visits a vinyl record store and spends some time listening to the songs Jun created for Mubai's movie. As fate would have it, Jun happens to walk by and catches sight of her inside. He pauses, watching her for a few moments. But instead of feeling anger or sadness, a sense of peace washes over him. A small smile forms on his lips before he quietly walks away. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.